Latest football news, engaging debates,
and fascinating opinions.
Pitchside Talk on IO Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Pitchside Talk here on IO Radio's Fridays at 5 p.m. for another week of football action with your host as always, George. I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're enjoying the nice weather. We're starting to now finally venture out into spring. I have to say today was lovely and warm. I was ruined sitting in an office at my computer going, I wish I was out in that sun, enjoying some lovely heat. But before we move on to what is coming up in today's show for Pitchside Talk, I'd better mention our co-host at Ipswich Town. As always, he is back for another time. It is Dan. Mate, how are you doing? Are you enjoying the lovely weather and the football? We've got plenty of football as always.
Yeah, we're coming into the running now, aren't we? We're getting close to it anyway, so we're going to have lots of football. But yeah, I've had a decent week. Not want Town to be doing a bit better, but no, I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, we all want Town to do a bit better, but we'll get onto that a little bit later on in the show. But first, social media, it is Twitter. He's at Pitchside Talk. Instagram is at Talk_Pitch. YouTube, Mixcloud, both at Pitchside Talk. If you want to listen back to any of our previous shows, do not worry. Right there on YouTube and Mixcloud for you to have a listen back to. So today's show, we will be talking about Ipswich Town and their trip to Morecambe. Yes, Morecambe, not Eric Morecambe, Morecambe Wise. They travelled down to Morecambe to play their first time, I think, actually, Morecambe Stone. I think it's the first ever away game, if I'm correct. I'm not too sure, but I think it is.
I'm pretty sure you are, yeah. I don't. There might have been a cup game somewhere that I can't remember, but yeah, definitely in the league.
Yeah, well, first ever league meeting then at Morecambe Stone, which I'm not really too sure it's called, but unfortunately, I don't know this information. I'm not a encyclopedia of football. Then we'll be talking about the Premier League and the Carabao Cup final that happened over the weekend and the FA Cup fifth round. Yes, it's been happening over the midweek period, and we'll be talking about that, running through the results and the draw, potentially, maybe the draw. I'm not too sure. But when we come back, we'll be talking about Ipswich Town and what happened when they travelled down to Morecambe. Don't go anywhere.
Stay up to date with the latest footy news.
Pitchside Talk on IO Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Pitchside Talk here on IO Radio. Fridays at 5 p.m. with me, George, your host, and my co-host as always, Dan. We're back here for another show this week. And before we move on, talking about Morecambe versus Ipswich Town, the first ever league meeting between these two sides at a Morecambe Stadium. I better mention the social media's Twitter. It's at Pitchside Talk. Instagram is at Talk_Pitch. YouTube, Mixcloud are both at Pitchside Talk. If you want to listen back to any of our previous shows. And well, after another busy week for Ipswich Town, where we saw, well, a mix of emotions after getting 3 points against Burford, but then getting a point against Cheltenham at Portman Road, we saw them get closer to the playoffs, ever so slightly closer to the playoffs. But Saturday offered Town the chance to bounce back after hitting a bump in the road to get 3 points on the road at Morecambe, a team who currently sit in the relegation zone. No wins in their last 6 and only 3 points from those 6 games as well. But unfortunately, it was another frustrating afternoon for Town as they had to fight back to rescue a point after Morecambe struck first against the flow of the game as Town were absolutely dominating it in the first half. Morecambe strike and Wes Burns equalised to get a point back for Town. But Dan, another frustrating afternoon for Ipswich Town. A point on the road, a point which is good. It's good as a point, but they missed out on 3 once again. But the frustration has grown even bigger because the gap to the playoffs has got even bigger because it's now 6 points. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's getting bigger and bigger, isn't it? Which is a bit concerning. But yeah, this game is another frustrating game, and it's exactly the same pattern as the Cheltenham one at home, isn't it? You know, it's another game where we dominated the first half. We're passing it around fantastically. Had, hundreds, well, not hundreds, but no, lots of chances. I don't know why I said hundreds, but lots of chances to take the lead. I think Bond missed a couple of headers. We had some balls clipped into the box, which weren't taken. And it's really disappointing because I feel like with this team, if we don't get that early goal, then we can't really get the ball over the line, which is kind of what happened. So yeah, it was really disappointing not to get the first goal. Second half again started sloppy like it did in the Cheltenham game, and of course Morecambe took the lead, which was of course bitterly disappointing considering the way we'd played in the game. Because once again we dominate the ball and we're doing it every game now, which is really good to see, and we're playing some really good football and some really nice football. But you know, if you don't take your chances, you're going to concede at some point, and I think it was you know, really frustrating to concede. We did go a record though without conceding. You know, the longest we've ever gone in our history, which is pretty crazy to say.
I have to add one thing, right? When Town tweeted that out, right? Just a note to the people who are on social media: please don't tweet out in a game ever again, because I think that just jinxed everything. It was basically tweet this out. Yeah, I'll set the record, but Morecambe has just scored. Oh no!
Yeah. Them things always happen. It always jinx it. But yeah, that's really annoying. But of course, we equalised through Wes Burns, so we'll take a point. But you know, we should have won it, and we've ruined missed chances again, and we can't keep doing this, can we? Because it is coming back to bite us, isn't it? Really?
It is. Yeah. It sort of reminds me of we huffed and we puffed, but we couldn't score a goal. I think that's the summary of Ipswich Town's, well, in the last two games, realistically. But after the game, as always, Kieran McKenna, he spoke to the media, and he basically admitted it's been a very frustrating week at the club. I think probably the most frustrating in his managerial career. Adding, it's a frustrating week, the result at the end of a frustrating week. It is incredible that we have only scored one goal over two games. I thought we were extremely good in our performance, 95% of the pitch. We did so many things well, but just not on the yards close to their goal. On the other hand, we can obviously be proud of the team in so many areas, but on the other hand, within the position we are in, we cannot afford a draws, and we want to win and get back, and we need get there, and we need to score more goals. Dan, he's highlighted it's been a frustrating week. I think, as I said at the top, it's probably been the most frustrating week, I think, in his managerial career, his very short managerial career, which only started back in December. But 2 points from two very winnable games. You know, no disrespect to the opposition. Looking at what they've been coming in their form quite recently, you would have argued that Town should be easily getting 6 points from both of these games here. But with these two draws here, has that maybe cost Town a bit in their playoff chances? Because looking at a site called sportsclubstats.com, they simulate thousands of different results that can happen between the sides that are in this playoff fight. And Town's percent chances have, decreased massively now to just 4% of the top six finish. But as McKenna is the optimist, playoffs are still alive, well and truly. But does it feel like this draw here just maybe hammers in the nail more into the coffin, which is not really needed right now?
Yeah, I think it does to an extent. And I think a draw is such a disappointing result because it's a bit of an unknown. Like if we lost the game, I'd be sitting here saying, yeah, that's probably it. But, you know, we're still within reach. But as you say, these you know, it's kind of 4% chance we'll get in the playoffs. And that's because of the, you know, teams around us having games in hand. Obviously, you can't give up. And, you know, as I've said before on the show, I think McKenna and the players aren't really looking at the league table and just taking it game by game. So I think that will continue. And I don't think you can give up. You know, there's still a chance. Whether it's a big chance or not, it's going to be difficult to do it. Let's just say that. But, you know, we need to just keep going and keep getting results. And we need to just score goals. That's the big thing at the moment. So this was a big dent, I think, these two, especially these two results against Cheltenham and Morecambe. As you said, it was kind of two games that we probably should have got 6 points from. And of course, as you say, no disrespect to the teams in this league because, you know, it's a difficult league to get out of as it's been proven. So it's a disappointing result, but I'm not going to give up just yet. It's the hope that kills you and all that. We've been playing well. We're not losing games, are we? But I think just draws are a bit frustrating because you just don't know where it's going to go from there. You don't know if the next games are going to be losses or wins, and if we draw, you can't go up with on just draws either. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one in that way, but it's a bit of a. I think after these two games, I'm looking at it, think it's going to be more likely that we're not going to make the playoffs this year. But as I say, I'm not going to give up hope just yet.
Well, Dan, you are correct. It is the hope that does kill you. I think we've seen that for many years for Ipswich Town fans. It is the hope that kills you. But is McKenna still optimistic? Because looking at Town's position, they are 6 points off the playoffs, only 2 wins away. But is he still optimistic because Sunderland and Wycombe have played the same amount of games as Town? Plymouth, who sit 8th, have 2 games in hand above those teams. But is he more looking at if Town could put a run together of just winning games now until the end of the season, no droppers, just winning games, they could sneak into 6th place, and that still gives them the fighting chance to still go up.
Yeah, I mean, you can't give up, can you? And he's experienced enough of a coach and a person in football to know that anything can happen. So, with the points as they are, it's still possible. We could still be there by the end of the season. It's not looking great looking at the table now with teams with games in hand, but them teams could drop points. You never know what could happen. So yeah, you can't give up just yet, and I'm glad that he's not doing that. But the thing is, we've had managers in the past who have kind of, we're well off the playoffs. I think under Lambert, we were like 12 points off the playoffs, and he's saying we're in and around, and it's kind of like a fake hope. But this one feels more real, I think McKenna's a more down-to-earth person, so it feels a bit more real. So, of course, the hope is there, and I'm sure, with all Ipswich fans, we know that it's still possible. It's going to be a difficult task, and we've got a lot of work to do. But, McKenna has still got his sights on the playoffs, and if he thinks we can get there, then who are we to go against him? Because he's had a pretty good start so far, hasn't he?
Yes, he's had a pretty good start so far. Well, if Town are going to get a run of wins together, they maybe need to start scoring some goals. Well, that's what club captain Sam Morsey has stated. We need to start scoring goals because at the moment, the goals have dried up in the last 2 games. Town have not been very clinical enough in front of goal, despite dominating the games, but no end product. And that's where you've got to look at your strikers to produce the goals. And well, Bon and Norwood, who started the last game against Morecambe, there's some pretty shocking stats down. I don't think you'll really want to hear, but I'm going to tell you them anyway. Bon has scored 1 goal in his last 20 games for Ipswich Town, and Norwood hasn't scored a goal in his last 9. And looking at the other 2 strikers in Piggott and Jackson, Piggott's only scored 2 goals in 21 games, and Jackson 1 in his last 13. Dan, Ipswich have got a goal problem at the moment up top. Yeah, it's not looking too great for their 2 strikers, but I think we need to ask here, who is going to be that player to step up and solve these problems? Because each striker has sort of been dipping in and out of form. At one point it was Bon, he dipped out of form, then it was Norwood, Norwood's dipped out of form, then it was Jackson, and now it seems to be Jackson's out of form, Piggott's out of form, Bon's out of form, Norwood's out of form, all of them out of form. But who's going to be that striker to step up and solve the problems? Or maybe, should Tyree Simpson, who was called back from Swindon Town, where he got 11 goals in his 29 appearances, would it be his chance maybe to shine and produce the goals that McKenna's side need desperately?
Yeah, it's a really, I guess, frustrating time for McKenna in the striking department, and it just feels like all our strikers are out of form, which is really disappointing. Who is it going to be? It's a tough question. I think Jackson is not that type of player. I don't think he's a goal scorer, but he does a job when he's on the pitch. He can run onto loose balls, and his pace is fantastic. So I think he's there for a different reason. But I think the other 3 strikers are there to score goals. we've seen all three of them can do it. You know, Norwood, I think he scored. I can't remember how many goals he scored for Tranmere in that time. He's had
Oh,
spells at Ipswich
it was 30 odd,
where
I want to say off the top of
it
my
was
head, no?
30 odd. Yeah. So he's had spells at Town where he's scored loads of goals. He's had one this year where he scored in 4 games in a row, I think it was. So he can do it. We've seen Bond can do it as well. He scored 12 goals this season. I think 11 in the first half of the season. So he can do it as well. And Pigott can do it too. He did it last season for Wimbledon. So, you know, all three of them can do it. It's really confusing to me why they're not firing, because we have last season, I'd say, the strikers aren't firing because they're not getting any balls into them and the build-up play is so poor. But, this season it's great build-up play and we're getting balls into the box. Burns on the right-hand side is constantly, in all the games I've seen this year, putting balls low into the middle of the box from the right-hand side with loads of speed, and it just needs to be tapped in. We just can't get onto it. So I think it's a kind of, where are these goals going to come from? So it'll be interesting to see if he, gives Tyree Simpson a go. And I think he deserves it, Simpson. I think he deserves a chance because he didn't want to leave Swindon. I'm not really sure if we're not going to use him. I'm not really sure why we recalled him. It's something to do with a contract. I think that was the reason. I think McKenna said, but he wanted to stay at Swindon, and I'm sure he doesn't want to be at Town to just play in the under-23s. So why not give him a chance? I don't think he's going to be the saviour, as a lot of people are kind of suggesting, but it's worth giving him a go because it's not working with all the other players. I'm sure one goal for Norwood, Bonn or Pigott will, get the momentum going. I hope it does because we desperately need one of them to step up. But I'd like to see Simpson given a chance, yeah, and maybe not in one of the important games we've got coming up, but one of the, I guess maybe at home to Lincoln on the Tuesday night after the game away at Fleetwood would be a good chance to give him a go, maybe off the bench, because why not? It's nothing to lose.
No, there's nothing to lose in that sense, mate. But should he get a chance in the next game, which is against Fleetwood? Would that maybe be a bit more of a perfect opportunity for him with a side that are struggling? But if he scores, maybe this might be the spark and the kick up the backside. Some of the other players need to start firing again. That might create a bit of competition. But I know you say about him coming against Lincoln, which I think, funny enough, his Town appearance was. He came on and did he come on against Lincoln? No, it was Fleetwood. His Town appearance was against Fleetwood in the league. Maybe it'd be perfect circle for him to start against Fleetwood, actually. See a little theory going on here. Maybe we should start against Fleetwood. Perfect circle for him.
I mean, it's worth a go. I don't think he will. I just can't see it happening. But it's worth a go. That's the thing. If he starts on Saturday and scores, we'll all be raving about him, and he should be starting every single game. But if he comes in against Fleetwood and doesn't perform well, a bit of them nerves coming back into a first team and playing in the league above. If he doesn't play well in that first game, then that could do his confidence. Could do something to his confidence. So I think we should bring him in gradually. I know we're struggling for goals, but I think bringing him in gradually as a youngster is the best thing to do. But as you said, maybe if he comes in and scores a goal or scores the goals that we need, it gives the strikers we have at the club already a kick up the backside and, a bit more competition to what there already is. So I might be on the fence a little bit with this one, that I want him maybe to come in and make a difference, but then I think maybe bringing him in too quickly will be too much of a risk. Yeah, so it's a really interesting one for sure because we're not scoring. So
yeah, it'll be on McKenna's mind to be a big call to make on Saturday, whether he starts or he's even on the bench or even he's not there. It'll be a big call, whatever decision he makes. And well, Town, they're back on the road again, as what discussed earlier on. They're back on the road looking to get back to winning ways and to keep their playoff hopes alive. I think if they lose this game here, the gap might just get a little bit too big for them to overturn. But if they do win here, they can close the gap back down. And this time they're off on another long road trip to Fleetwood, who, well, they're staring at the drop zone at the moment. Only 2 points for them and 2 points off them. Sorry, winless in the last 8 games, getting 5 points from those 8 games as well. Dan, Ipswich Town, they need to get back to winning ways quickly, and to keep those playoff hopes alive. But they're playing another side that are struggling in Fleetwood, who are, battling relegation, struggling for wins, and they need 3 points desperately. And we're seeing with Town, when they play sides like this, they seem to struggle.
Yeah, you can see it being another one of those games, can't you, where we just can't get the ball over the line and it being another draw. But it's, of course, going to be another tough game going up away, all the way to Fleetwood. There's a lot of, Northwest away games this year that are tough, and this is another one, and it's going to be a really interesting one. Obviously, a win is massive. We just need to keep winning every single game now. So the players and the manager know that, and I'm still confident with the way we're playing. So I think it's going to be another tight game. But I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to go for a win. I'm quietly confident and hoping that we can, because I'll take a scrappy 1-0 win any day. But if we can dominate the game and get the 1-0 win, that'll be great. So yeah, I think it'll be 1-0. I think it will be a tougher game than we think, and obviously Wes Burns is back at his old club as well. But yeah, 3 points, and hopefully results going our way as well. That'd be nice.
Yes, that'd be the perfect scenario for Town. 3 points on the road, and all the other results around them going their way. And well, let us know on Twitter at Pitch to Talk. What is your score prediction for Fleetwood Town versus Ipswich Town? Who will come out on top? Will anybody come out on top? Would it be a draw? We do not know. Let us know what your score predictions are on Twitter. And that is all for your Ipswich Town roundup this week. And when we come back, we'll be talking about the Premier League game week number 27 with the Carabao Cup final pushed in there together to make one brilliant little bit of section, because it's going to be good. We had plenty of football. We really enjoyed it. 9 games happened, controversial moments, another manager gone, and the Carabao Cup final. What more could you ask for on a Saturday and a Sunday weekend? And we'll be back right after this.
The best place in Ipswich to hear the latest football debates, Pitchside Talk on IO Radio.
Hello, and welcome back to Pitchside Talk here on IO Radio. It's Fridays at 5 p.m. with me, your host, George, as always, and my co-host, Dan. As always, he's back for another week of football action as we look at what's been going on in the world of football. And before we even talk about the Premier League and the Carabao Cup final, I better mention the social medias. Twitter is at Pitchside Talk, Instagram is at Talk_Pitch, YouTube and Mixcolour, both at Pitchside Talk. If you want to listen back to our previous shows, or even this one, if you missed what we've mentioned today about Ipswich Town and their trip to Morecambe, do not worry, it'll be up on the YouTube and Mixcloud at 6 p.m. If you want to listen back to any parts of this show, do not worry, it'll be up there for you to listen. And well, the Premier League was back for another thrilling game week where we had 9 games happen. And well, it was full of a controversial moment. Again, VAR, not very happy with you. The 9th Premier League manager was given his P45, and the Carabao Cup final happened between 2 of the biggest clubs with a glorious history in this cup competition as well. But we'll have a look at the Premier League results first before we get onto the Carabao Cup final. And starting off with a Friday night game, Southampton, they won 2-0 over Norwich. Leeds lost 4-0 to Spurs. Newcastle picked up 3 points on the road against Brentford in a 2-0 win, as we saw Christian Eriksen make a comeback. Really, really, really good to see him back on the football pitch. Palace, they got a point against Burnley in a 1-1. Manchester United draw 0-0 with Watford at home. Yes, a 0-0 at Old Trafford. I'm not joking. Brighton, they lost 2-0 to Aston Villa, and Man City won a 1-0 at Goodison Park against Everton. And then for your only game on Sunday, West Ham won 1-0 over Wolves to help their top 4 push for them. But we'll be talking about Saturday night's game, and that was Everton versus Man City, a big clash between two teams who were fighting for very much different causes this season. Everton, actually fighting for different causes, but united on one cause as well. Everton, they needed 3 points as they were staring at the drop zone in the face. They were briefly in it at one point, but now they're back out of it, only 1 point away from that drop zone. Now, Man City, they needed 3 points in their title defence after Liverpool closed that gap back down. But before we talk about the football, Dan, on the pitch that happened, before the game, the two sides, they have two Ukrainian players, as Zinchenko plays for Man City and Milivenko plays for Everton, who embraced each other in the warm-up, a very, very touching moment. And then Everton players, they wore Ukrainian flags as they came out, and Man City wore a t-shirt saying a no war with Ukrainian flags on there. Banners and songs and all sorts of around the ground. The song of He Ain't Heavy, Here's My Brother was played out, which saw very touching moment, very powerful moment. But it's really good to see that football is united on this front of the awful scenes we're seeing at the moment in Ukraine, which is, I think, on the mind of everybody. People are not even affected by the war. It's on their minds. This this horrible, horrible thing is happening not so far away from us, but it just highlights how small football is at times, but how powerful it can be in bringing people together and the message it sends out.
Yeah, it's, great to see that sort of message being put out in football, and it does just show how important football can be in showing these type of things, because it's, absolutely awful what we're seeing in Ukraine at the moment. I think we all know, we've seen scenes on TV and the internet of what the Ukrainian people are going through at the moment. So, to see two Ukrainian players come together and kind of I guess everyone in that ground actually just come together and be together with Ukraine in this horrible time. It was just really touching to see. And as I say, it's important. These things are, I guess, football united in these things, because football is such a big platform, especially in this country and across Europe as well. It's such a big platform. So, to put these messages across in a big game like this, the team that are top of the league, millions of people will be watching that game on TV across the world, really. So, to see this type of message, it's really good to see and really touching. And I just want to, I think everyone wants to just pay their respects to the awful thing that's going on in Ukraine at the moment, and hope all the people in Ukraine just stay safe, because it's just absolutely horrible to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, it is horrible to watch sort of day by day. I think we're recording where it's been 2 weeks since the war has begun. It's not a war in Russia, but it's a war really on democracy. And we do hope that it does come to an end soon in a peaceful manner. And, things have changed, and we go back to living a peaceful life, but this sort of situation never happens ever again. But it's time to talk about the game. And in the game, Man City, they saw out a 1-0 win thanks to Phil Foden. But maybe the game should have ended 1-1 after Everton were denied a penalty after the ball appeared to hit Rodri's arm and, be controlled by Rodri's arm in the process, which VAR had a pretty long review and said no penalty. After 3 minutes of debating whether it was a penalty or not, they said no penalty in the end. But since then, Everton have received an apology from Mike Riley, who is the head of the referees board, over what happened with the handball, which sort of basically confirms in my mind it was a penalty. But Dan, another controversial moment where VAR failed to do its job. But Chris Kavanagh looked at the penalty from 3 different angles, said no penalty, but he didn't assist Paul Tierney, or Paul Tierney didn't question. Maybe I should be looking at this at the monitor, because I have the final say here, not VAR. But should have this been a penalty? Because Mike Ray, the head of the referee's body, saying sorry to Everton for what happened. So that means it was a penalty, but wasn't given. Football is so backwards. This VAR and everything at the moment.
It is backwards, yeah. And the decisions seem to keep getting worse every single season, don't they? I couldn't believe it when I was watching that. We've seen so many stupid handball decisions in the past. I don't know how many years VAR has been in the Premier League now, but
two years now.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but we've seen so many stupid ones, and when we actually see a legitimate handball in the box, which is so clearly a penalty, it's just it's unbelievable. Because as you say, he controls it with his arm. It might not hit his hand, but he controls it with his arm. It's ridiculous, and we see an actual legitimate. It's the mistakes that VAR make it's just unbelievable. To see that not given. We've said it so many times on the show, and since we've started, actually, it was one of our first debates I'm sure we had on this show was about VAR, and it doesn't seem to have got better even in the last few years. You'd think that we've seen this new handball rule come in, which I still don't really understand to this day. I don't think anyone really understands it. It's different rules for different referees, it seems. And as you say, that he looked at it at three different angles, and to still not give a penalty for it is just absolutely crazy. I was fuming when I saw it. I'm not even an Everton or Man City fan, so it's just unbelievable. I couldn't believe it. It's clearest handball you ever see. It should have been a penalty, but. Of course, VAR doing its usual thing.
Yep, it gives ones that are not penalties and very obscure or hits your armpit, as João Moutinho once found out against Man City. They give that, but not ones that are very blatant handballs. He could have picked the ball up all I can, and they still wouldn't have given it. Well, that is the Everton Man City game. And the next game we're going to look at is Leeds versus Spurs. And this clash on Saturday afternoon was a big game for both sides. As well, they weren't looking to end their losing streaks. For Leeds, they've been on the losing streak of 3 games in a row, which has seen them fall down the table quickly and has seen quite a lot of pressure on Marcelo Bielsa's seat at Leeds. The hot seat, Ellen Road, was a little bit under pressure heading to this game. But for Spurs, they've lost their last 4 out of their 5 games, leading Antonio Conte to question his own future, not the club question his future, himself basically saying, I'm not doing a good enough job. Sack me, basically, or fund me. I don't know what he's trying to say. But on the day, Spurs, they ran riot at Ellen Road with a 4-0 win over Leeds, which saw Marcelo Bielsa become the 9th manager to be sacked this season in the Premier League. He was handed his P45 after 3.5 years at Ellen Road, which included ending the Premier League drought of 16 years. They finally got back from the Championship to the Premier League and then guided them to a 9th place finish at the first time of asking in his first season back. But Dan, Bielsa's time, it is now over. But had the writing been on the walls for a little bit of time for Marcelo Bielsa? Because he's been, in his time at Leeds in the second season, he's been very reluctant to change. The tactics are the same from the first season. Kamikaze football, entertaining football, which we all love. We all want to see entertaining football. But has that cost him in this long run here? Because his entertaining football and not changing style has seen Leeds be nicknamed Leaky Leeds because they concede 6 or 4 goals per game. They're falling down the table. They're now 2 points off the drop zone. The teams below them have got games in hand. Leeds are in serious trouble here of getting relegated.
They are, yeah, and I think it was coming. I don't think this season has been good enough, and as you say, they cannot help but concede goals, and I feel like we've said it before, and I think it's a good example with Sheffield United in the first season. They're a new team in the league. They bring their own style of football. I think Bielsa and Leeds came into the league and we were all excited to see what they could do, and they brought an exciting style of football, really fast-paced attacking football, and it worked in the first season. But I think it runs its course, especially in the Premier League, because I think teams kind of work out, especially when you've got some of the best teams in the world in the league. They work out what you're doing, and if you're not up for change, you're not going to get anywhere. So I think that is probably his downfall in the end. I feel like Leeds fans will look back at his time with fondness. I think he's, brought the Leeds fans football that they've enjoyed and got them back into the Premier League, where they believe they belong after such a long time in the Championship. But now they're in trouble again. So I think the fact that they're, under Bielsa, it just wasn't working. They're falling down the table and looking like they could be in danger of getting relegated this season. A change was needed just to see if they could, have a change up to try and survive. And I think it's the right time to do it. I think a lot of people will be sad to see Bielsa go, but I think it's the right time. And let's see what this new manager can do and see if they can survive this year, because it's going to be a tough ask. They've got, not a lot of time to do it in. So he's going to have a big job on his hands.
Yes, it's going to be now big running. And they did appoint a new manager a few days later in, excuse me, sorry about that, in Jesse March. He has been named as the new manager on a 3-year contract. He's very famous for having spells at New York Red Bulls, RB Salzburg, and RB Leipzig, a very experienced American manager with the Red Bull team. So it'll be interesting to see what he can do in the Premier League. And now finally, the Carabao Cup final happened on Saturday. The 61st EFL Cup, League Cup, Carabao Cup has many names, but it was the 61st final, and we saw two of the most successful teams in the cup's history. 13 trophies between them. Yes, Chelsea versus Liverpool, as Chelsea look to add to their trophy cabinet this season with the Super Cup and the Club World Cup, and take the first of the 4 domestic trophies up for grabs this season. But for Liverpool, they were looking to add their first domestic cup in a decade, since last winning it back at Wembley in 2012. A penalty shootout over Cardiff split the two sides on the day, and also a matchup between Jurgen Klopp and Thomas Tuchel. And the last 2 games between the two managers had ended in draws. And we all know that Chelsea and Liverpool have had quite a bit of a recent rivalry in the last 20-odd years. But on the day, Liverpool, they made it a 9th historical a 9th EFL Cup trophy, taking them now alone the most won by any club in a dramatic penalty shootout, which secured that first domestic trophy since 2012 in a classic EFL Cup game. To remember, Dan, it might not have been excited. It might be 0-0 after extra time, but it was very entertaining, thrilling. VAR playing its hand, offsides, fights, little bit of everything a final needs, but not the end product, but a dramatic penalty shootout to separate both sides. Pretty good to watch, I think we have to say.
Yeah, it was one of them entertaining 0-0s, wasn't it? And I couldn't believe there weren't a goal. It was crazy, but yeah, an entertaining game, and I guess ending on a really dramatic note. And I think there's a lot of dramatic VAR decisions, wasn't there? Offsides. I think Chelsea have three offsides, or 3 goals disallowed, or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, it was 3. But yeah, it was crazy to go in at 0-0, and obviously you don't want a final to be 0-0. But luckily it wasn't a boring one, and a really exciting penalty shootout as well. Every single penalty going in. Went to goalkeepers at the end. I don't think Kepa could have. Well, he was playing rugby, wasn't he? So skied it over the bar. I think Chelsea they're going to be disappointed because they had chances to win the game. So I think they'll be disappointed coming away from it. But for Liverpool, it's another cup win, and they'll be happy with that, I'm sure, even if it did go to penalties. It'll be interesting to see if they can do a double this year,
there's
or
talks
maybe
of
even more. You never know.
they're talking the quadruple already, which is a
The
bit
quadruple.
it's a bit early to talk about a quadruple, but
Yeah.
anything can happen in football. But as you
Anything
mentioned
could.
about Chelsea, another final at Wembley, still no silverware for them yet again. But has their clinicalness in front of goal cost them? Because Mason Mount had 2 golden chances and their strikers were constantly offside.
Yeah, yeah, they were, weren't they? It was frustrating at times, but yeah, as I said before, they'll be disappointed if they miss chances, and it was an entertaining game, and you thought there would have been a goal, and it looked at times Chelsea were going to get it, but they just couldn't get the ball over the line, and it sounds familiar, and I think that's been. They have had this kind of problem in a lot of games this year, especially the early part of the season, I think. Or was it mid-season? I can't really remember, but they were drawing quite a lot, weren't they, this year at one point? So yeah, I think they'll be disappointed going away from it. Another game where they don't get any silverware, but they'll have to go again next year. There's, we'll be playing cup games again soon enough.
Yep, they'll have to go again soon. And that is all for your Premier League and Carabao Cup roundup this week. And when we come back, we're just going to have a little bit of time to talk about the FA Cup 5th round. So don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to Pitchside Talk here on IO Radio Fridays at 5 p.m. with me, George, as always, and on my co-host, as always, Dan, who's joined me for the ride of this week's show. And well, we're now going to be talking about the FA Cup. But before we do that, I'd better mention the social medias. Twitter is at Pitchside Talk. Instagram's at Talk_Pitch. YouTube and Mixcloud both at Pitchside Talk. If you want to listen back to any of our previous shows or even this one, if you missed anything from today's show, do not worry. It'll be up at 6 p.m. If you've missed anything from us talking about It's a Town, Premier League, Carabao Cup, do not worry. It'll be up at 6 p.m. And now the FA Cup 5th round was here. Yes, we've been watching the FA Cup 5th round very intensely, as we've had some midweek games, some shocking results, and the draw as well. And I'm going to quickly just run through the scores that happened during those games. And we start off with Peterborough versus Man City, and Man City won 2-0 on the night against Peterborough, the Championship side that are currently struggling at the moment. Crystal Palace, they had to see off a Stoke City, who made it 1-1 at one point, made Crystal Palace saw with a 2-1 victory. Patrick Vieira not very happy by his side performance, letting a goal slip. And then we saw Millsborough versus Tottenham, and that was a 1-0 win until the Middlesbrough youth, Colbert came on and scored the winning goal in extra time. And then for Wednesday's games, we saw Luton Town put a valiant effort against Chelsea, but unfortunately lost 2-3 on the night, actually leading the game twice at one point against the Club World Cup champions. Southampton caused an absolute shock and knocked out West Ham, one of the teams that were looking quite good for this year's competition. Could have been their year, but they were knocked out against the Saints in a 3-1 win. Liverpool, they won 2-1 over Norwich as they continue their quest for the quadruple. And we still have 2 games left to go in Bournemouth versus Everton, versus Bournemouth, which is happening. Unfortunately, we were recording this before the Thursday game. And we have Nottingham Forest versus Huddersfield, which is happening on Monday night. But Dan, we know the draw. We've seen the draw. We've now seen the draw, and we now know who's playing who. And I will read out the draw in a second, because we've got Crystal Palace versus Everton or Bournemouth as the first quarter-final game. Nottingham Forest or Huddersfield versus Liverpool. What a tie that'll be for either side in the second quarter-final game. Then Middlesbrough versus Chelsea, another big game for Middlesbrough at home. That'll probably be a sellout crowd in the third quarter-final game. And that only leaves Southampton versus Man City in the fourth quarter-final game, which will be interesting to watch, because Southampton have got 2 draws out of Man City this season. But Dan's a friendly week in the FA Cup, and we've got some thrilling fixtures in the quarterfinals. It's what we love to see.
Yeah, it gives I think there's some chances in there for some upsets. You haven't got a top 6 against top 6, so it's going to be interesting for the quarterfinals of the FA Cup. As we're recording, we've still got to wait for Everton v Bournemouth, so that'll be an interesting game tonight as well. We all love some FA Cup action, don't we? Oh
yes, we do. We love FA Cup action. We absolutely love it. And Dan, unfortunately, we've hit the end of the show. The referee's about to blow his whistle for full time to call an end on today's show. I want to thank you as always, mate, for joining me. We've had quite a good show apart from Ipswich Town. We won't talk about that. But next
Ruining
week,
everything.
Yeah, as always. But will you be joining me next week? Because we're going to have a jam-packed show. We're going to have 2 Ipswich Town games in the space of 4 days. And that is what we love to see, isn't it?
We do. Only if it's 6 points.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
just say that. But yeah,
Okay.
I'll be there next week.
Okay. Disclaimer. Only if it's 6 points, Dan,
Yeah.
we'll be happy. Oh, God. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today, listening to the show. Twitter is at Pitchside Talk. Instagram is at Talk_Pitch. YouTube, Mixcloud, both at Pitchside Talk. If you've missed anything from today's show, do not worry. It'll be up there in a few minutes' time. So, I've been George as always. He has been Dan. We'll see you next week. And ciao.
Yeah.
The whistle has been blown for full time. Tune in next week for another jam-packed show.